There we go. So you were saying, Nancy, about you are doing this course in Case Western Reserve, right?
What's the course?
Yeah,
I,
the
I,
course is called
mhm.
the course is called Conversations. Let me double check this because if I get it wrong, I will not be happy with myself. Conversations that inspire coaching, learning, leadership, and change. And the instructors are Dr. Ellen Van Oosten, who is part of the WBEC forum, Dr. Melvin Smith, and Dr. Richard, I'm going to mispronounce his name, Boyataz, Boyatzis.
Right.
So they have a course actually they have a couple courses online in coaching. You can take them individually or you can take the whole set through Coursera. And I started out with this one, Conversations that Inspire. And as I said just a moment ago, having come from two other programs which have a different approach to coaching, and even those two programs are very different. This one is kind of a little mind-blowing because I hadn't thought about the idea of vision coaching or aspirational coaching, and the idea of the intentional change theory is really, I think it's really powerful. And as I just said, it also aligns very well with my graduate degree in spiritual psychology, which is very much intention-based. So that's why I brought the whole conversation up in the forum, because I wanted opinions. I mean, this was something really new to me, and I've been around for a long time.
Absolutely. You know, I started coaching like about 10 years ago, and I did this course that you're mentioning about 6 or 7 years ago. It really changed, as you said, my point of view and how to build a coaching program. You know, it's not just it's not like going to the psychologist or the psychiatrist that you want to talk about your stuff and they're going to try to fix it. This program actually made me change how I was doing my coaching profoundly. But I also took some other information and other courses that I have also from Coursera and some other courses here in Mexico and other certification programs. And what I did was I am putting what I like from each program and what works for each program.
Right.
And this intentional change theory, it helped me to it's very clear, right, how it's done, and it helps me to explain to my client what we want to do.
Okay.
We want to start from what we are today, our real self, and then go to find how is it that we're going to work to get to the ideal self. And for me, it was it has dramatically changed the way I approach my clients. And for them, it works because they understand, they can see in a graph what they want to do. Right? And something that I always say is that on the right side, on this right side of the graph, of the design, I'm going to be them all the time. But I cannot experiment or practice leadership for them. That's what they have to do. They have to, I'm going to have their backs. I'm going to help them as far as I can, but I cannot experiment leadership for them. And this graph helps me explain what I expect from them.
Okay.
So I think it for me, it has gone a long way, this program, this training. As you can see here, I always mention this is intentional change theory from Richard Boyatzis at the Case Western Reserve University. I give him credit all the time for this.
Of course.
So one thing that I do change a little bit, I do it a little twist, is on the learning plan. I don't stop at learning. We have to do an action plan, not just learning. You have to plan what are you going to experiment, where do you want to take yourself or your real self, how to get to the ideal self. And on the other hand, when we're talking about the strengths and differences, it is very complicated to find these characteristics just by talking. Again, this is not psychology. I'm not gonna spend, I don't know, 4 sessions or 5 sessions just to understand what the client is like. So I also use some assessments that really help me to understand what the real self is about.
Right.
So on this graph, this is, I don't know if you have any opinions. I don't know if Judy, you want to talk some about this?
It makes sense. I've seen it before, and just, yeah, I don't have anything to add at this moment.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. No, it looks. It flows well. That. I don't think there's anything at this point to say or change.
Great. So what we were talking about at Facebook is about the vision, right? And how we use the vision for the ideal self. And this is the image that I got from the course. And one thing is, this vision comes from the ideal self. And the ideal self comes from the dreams and aspirations and the purpose and your passion and whatever. And I think, on my point of view, I see it the other way around. I see it. This is how I see it. I wanted to share with you. I think that aspirations are the leading part. You have to be led by your aspirations. You can't forget about your aspirations. You have to have them always on your mind. And this is something that we get from other courses, like Judith Glazer's in conversational intelligence course. When you think about your aspirations, your brain works different, because it's thinking about the dreams, and maybe it's not possible. Maybe you're never going to get there, but your brain doesn't have a problem with that. When you put those aspirations into a vision, I think that, or sometimes if it's not properly done, the vision, it brings it down to the earth, and then your brain think, that's a lot of work. I don't want to go through all that work. Even though I have this aspiration, when you put it down as maybe as a task or homework or something I have to work for, the brain changes how it works. It doesn't mean that I don't work on visions. I think that what has to drive the vision is the aspiration. And then you have the vision, you have your purposes, and then when you have those 3 things, then you can understand what my ideal self should be, so that you can accomplish your purposes, accomplish your vision and your aspirations.
Are you saying that that the difference between aspiration and vision would be that your vision starts to concretize your aspirations in terms of to do lists and how to get there, the how of the why, kind of.
Absolutely.
And then what's really the difference between the aspiration and the purpose? I mean, I guess.
Right. So I think we have to always keep in mind our aspirations, right? That's what drives us. Then the vision has to include those aspirations. But then you have a little shorter term goals that we explain them, or we describe them as purposes. For example, I'm gonna talk maybe spiritually, right? So an aspiration that most of us have, maybe as Christians or maybe as Catholic, we want to be saints. To be a saint is to be with God, right? That is something that we are not going to fulfill in our life. We have to die for that. So we always have that aspiration working. We are always working for that aspiration, right? I'm talking on my religion or what I know. I am certain that some other religions have the same aspiration, to fulfill themselves in the spiritual level once this life is over, right? So my vision is to live like a saint, right? My vision is to be an example to other people. So that's where my vision finds the aspiration. But then there's purposes. How am I going to help live this vision? So one of the purpose maybe is I want to teach the Bible, or I want to teach other peoples to love God, or to bring the relationship closer to Jesus. Again, I'm talking about my religion, not wanting to get further into that. But then I have this purpose that gets me closer to that vision, and that vision that gets me closer to my aspiration. I could have some other purposes that help me to move to my vision of being a saint, right? Or having this relationship with God. I have a lot of purposes. And then when I think, okay, who do I have to be? What is my ideal self? So if we come back here to what we learned in the course, the dreams and aspirations, they do influence on the ideal self, and then from this ideal self comes the vision. I see it the other way around. The dreams and aspiration give you the vision, and then from that you can think of what you have to do, or what your ideal self would be. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Actually, I think it makes a lot of sense. And actually, the example you're using actually works really well too. I don't think because it breaks it down into very, very clear kind of steps. So the aspiration is to become a saint, and how do you do that? Which is the vision, which is to how to live a saintly life, and then the purposes, which may not be the best word, but it works. Is what do you need to do in order to do that, to live that life? So that's I think actually a very clear example.
And that works. I'm using a spiritual example because I think we have so much in common in there. But then you think of your professional aspirations. It's the same way. What do you want? What is your greatest aspiration in your professional life? I want to be the president of or the CEO of a huge company. Okay, that's the aspiration. What is your vision? How do you what kind of company are you looking for? And then the purposes is, how do you get into those kind of companies? What do you have to study? How do you have to prepare yourself so that you can accomplish that vision and that aspiration? And then again, who do you have to be? That's the ideal self.
Right.
So what we have done, I do have a program that works on all these levels. It's not something that you find in 2 weeks or 1 week. That is something that we work through. Maybe it could take maybe 9, maybe to 12 months, because we work profoundly on your aspirations, on your ideals, on yourself, on your vision, your purposes. We build 3 decisions. I don't know if that you're familiar with that. We have 2 routes or 3 routes. You have 2 routes, and you say which one you like more in your life, considering the professional, spiritual, yourself, and your family. And that's a program that takes maybe 9 to 12 months, because it's not something that you just sit and you know what you're aspiring, you know what your vision is. You have to work it through, and you have to feel it, and you have to write it down, and it's not that easy. So what I've done is I've developed a smaller or shorter program that is maybe 2 to 3 months, but we only work on the aspirations. We don't take that much time to work on vision and purposes, because it's not that easy, right? And once you find your vision, once you have your aspirations and you want to walk to the vision, it might take a while. And many of my clients, they don't know their aspirations, and they are it's quite difficult for them to write down the aspirations. I usually start with, we want you to write down 100 aspirations, and some people think that it's too many. Some people that is short, but I always want them to think outside of the box. If you say, I want to know your aspirations, and then you listen to 10 aspirations, they're not going deep enough, right? So I always start my programs with, what are your 100 aspirations? And that's what drives us, right? And then the program, it falls in place automatically. I don't have to, because they have these aspirations, and we don't take time to think about that. And when people get to the program and they start thinking of that, it changes their brain and everything works. So I'm going to tell you what I used to build the ideal self. I always talk about the aspiration in all domains. I'm going to repeat it: is spiritual, professional, family, and self. What are your aspirations? What are your stakeholders' expectations? And what are your expectations from your stakeholders? What do they want? What do they need from? What does your boss need from you? What do you need from your boss? If that's not understood, it's very difficult that you can know what your ideal self is, right? You need to know what your stakeholders need from you. And I have heard so many comments on the web recently that they say, you cannot live to other people's expectations. Well, relationships are about expectations. If you are not living up for your stakeholders' expectations, you're never going to get there, and the relationship is never going to grow. You need to know what their expectations are, and so at least with your stakeholders, you need to know what they expect. You need some knowledge, and as we said in the intentional change theory, you need to learn something in order to be a better leader, right? So what is it that you need to learn? so you can be the leader that you want to be, this ideal self. What is your physical capacity? Maybe I want to be, I would love to be a basketball player, but I am in meters, I am 165. That's very short. It's going to be very hard to be a basketball player. So what should I have to develop? And if I don't have this physical capacity, maybe my aspirations are too far, right? But when you talk about leading or being at work or working in an office, what you need is to have a good life, a good balance, a good physical condition, so you can take on the whatever endeavor you want to bring into your business, right? When you see or people that are overweight and they want to come to a business meeting that is so stressful, they can't even breathe because physically they are not prepared for that. So exercising is very important on our ideal self. Your habits and preferences, what are the habits that you need to build so that you can be this ideal self, right? Like waking up early, and then if you have the 4 domains, so you have your prayer or your meditation in the morning or at evening or whenever you want. You have your exercise. You stop smoking, maybe, right? And those habits and preferences, they are gonna help build this ideal self. And then obviously the IQ, how smart you are, and you can build that IQ. So if you don't understand that, you build more knowledge and or more capacity, and then you start understanding things. And last but not least, the emotional quotient. What is your emotional intelligence? Right? And as I said earlier, we cannot take like 4 sessions to understand this from our client. So we use a couple of assessments that help us. First, I have a personal assessment that I want my client to answer before we get started, where I have questions on the 4 domains, on the spiritual and professional and self and family matters. So I have this assessment that I want them to fill out, that gives me a perspective on their 4 domains. Also on our second or third session, we talk about the stakeholders, what the relevance of their stakeholders are. We talk about emotional intelligence, and then what I do is they have these other assessments. This is the IQ 2.0, is the emotional quotient assessment. So as you can see, this is a very good leader, a good friend of mine now, that has, I'm sorry, it's in Spanish, I didn't get the time to translate it, but, it's about your self-concept, your self-actualization, emotional conscience, emotional expression, assertiveness, independence, interpersonal relationships, empathy, social responsibility, problem solving, reality test, impulse control, flexibility, stress tolerance, and optimism. So these are I really like this tool because it compares you to leaders and how leaders use this emotional competencies to be a better leader. So I really love this. When you see this result on yourself, it's like an X-ray, on your feelings, on how you use the emotional intelligence. So this helps us. This green line is what good leaders should be in this green line. The purple line is the average. The green line is the good leaders. As you can see, maybe good leaders are not, they don't have that much impulse control, you know? Good leaders are impulsive, right? They are not that empathetic either. That's you can see that in great leaders, right? They have a good empathy, but it doesn't have to be that high. And then we have the red line that is when these competencies are too high. For example, in this case, self-concept, right? It's too high. Maybe this is a friend of mine. She can maybe sometimes come out like pretentious, or maybe like I know it all. You know, that could be the case in this when the self-concept is too high. So this is a tool that helps me to understand the emotional quotient. And then we have the IQ. I use Thurman Miller, sorry, which it gives me the IQ, and it's divided in these 10 concepts. And then I use everything this workplace to find the habits and preferences. So I see that this person is very solid, you know, she likes things very in a properly manner, an ordered manner. She likes everybody to be friends and have no problems. And, you know, as a leader in her position, we are trying to make her shift a little bit to the D domain, because she is going to take a new role now in this company, and she needs to have more power, you know, more domain really, and we want to try to do that in her program, and then find her ideal self a little bit more aggressive in doing business, right? So this is what I use and how I integrate the intentional change theory to my program. When we have those assessments, we can understand their strengths and their differences. And then we can do a learning plan. Once we have all that information, we can do a learning plan, and they can start to experiment and practice leadership until it becomes their ideal self. Absolutely, with their trusting relationships, or else it would be twice as hard, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I talk too much, or how are you liking this, or I'd like to hear your opinions, you know?
I'm curious about...
Hola, Gerardo.
I'm curious about the intentional change theory has this idea of like competing commitments. So, you know, you talked about the like physical capacity. So if you have somebody who say their dream is to become a CEO, and they, you know, they know that they know like who the stakeholders are and who they need to kind of get to, and they know that they need to take a course on this or that or the other thing to, you know, they need to build their knowledge. And then there's this physical capacity, and they are a mother of young children and aging parents, and, you know, like whatever the realities of their life are that's going to prevent them from gaining the knowledge that they need. And then people feel really stuck because you've got this commitment to become the CEO, but the competing commitment of taking care of your young children Absolutely. And your aging parents. And that's where I feel like I get sort of stuck with people, when there's just these like
Right.
That compete with their aspirations.
Yes, I would. The question would be, and that's a question that I always make is, can you plan it? Can you put it in a plan so that it works? And if you put it in a plan, you can make it work. Absolutely, I agree with you, Judy. Women have the hardest. It's not easy for women. For men, it's easier. Women have it much harder. And one of the things that when you talk about family, for example, if you want to be the CEO, you want to have a husband or a person that supports you. And I can tell you, speak about myself and my wife. My wife is actually studying a PhD. So, I have to help around more because if I do that, the house will be upside down and she is not going to like that. So, most of the week I cook because also I work from home. She doesn't. So I support her in that path, as much as I can. But then today I'm traveling, right? So I'm not at home. I'm traveling. I'm gonna be out the whole week, and she knows I have to do that. So she says, this week I'm gonna maybe not do that much of the study or the work, and I want to come back earlier from my work, and she's doing her part at this moment. So I just talked to her a couple hours ago. I said, is it okay for me to come back on Tuesday because I have some clients here that want to talk to me over the weekend and on Monday? And she said, okay, as long as we plan it, we can do it. That was her answer. So you have to work together with that stakeholder that is your husband or your wife. You both want to know what are your intentions and where do you want to go? What are your aspirations, right? And how you can help each other. So family plays a big role on that success. And then you can plan it. You can say, okay, this time is for me, this time is for you, or to help my family, and this time is to exercise. And when we say exercise, most of the time we think like 2 hours a day in the gym. That's not it. Maybe you walk 20 minutes a day, and for some people that's enough, right? My father, who was a very very well succeeded executive for an international company, he had to travel a lot. So what he would do is he would take his walks at the airport. So instead of just sitting down and waiting for the next flight, airports in the US especially, they are very large. So you can walk for a half an hour or 20 minutes and you already did your exercise, But you need to have that in your habits or in your mindset that you need to walk every day, or you need to walk at least 4 or 5 times a week. Or else when you get to your meeting, you're not going to have the energy that you need to get it done, or to not maybe get it done, but to react to whatever is happening in the meeting and then still be alive at the end. Right? Or still have energy to come back to your family and enjoy them, and not just, oh, I'm too tired and I need to lay down, and your family suffers from it. Right?
So on a slightly different note, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who are going into more corporate leadership roles, and I've run into several who simply can't make that adjustment because there's a different mindset between someone who's in a leadership position in a more structured corporation than a lot of entrepreneurs. So I've always struggled with how to either help them make that transition or help them be clear that that transition isn't something that's going to happen, because they do not either have the willingness or the capacity to make the shift in mindset.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I guess I guess I'm asking for a little bit of guidance, because that seems to be the group of people I've worked with most often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And when I talk to leaders, like when they want to go into a higher position, I always think or give them the example like Bill Gates, right? Mm-hmm. Bill Gates has a lot of free time. Why is that? Right? Because he's the head, and he's the head of his business, right? Mm-hmm. One thing that my father taught me is he was vice president for Latin America, right? So when he got to the country, he said, if the general manager does not have time to work with me, he's doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. Because when you go higher the position, you have to be more strategic. You have to be thinking about the strategy. You have to be thinking about how to make the business grow, how to add value. And if you don't have time to do that, you're not going to have time also to exercise. You're not going to have time for your family. So you need to build your or what I tell my clients is that we need to focus on what are the most valuable tasks that you have in your position, and focus on that. What doesn't add value, you have to delegate. You have to put it for someone else, or maybe that isn't even, nobody have to do that. That's something that the company is wasting time on doing that. So stop doing it. Yeah. When you focus on your most valuable things or valuable tasks, then you have a lot of free time. And now what I tell them is, okay, now what are the tasks that your boss would want you to take on? And then you can move up the ladder. Yeah, you start taking on more responsibility, even though you don't have the position, but then you get to practice. And then when people are looking, I'm gonna look for somebody that can take this new position. Judy is already doing that, so let's bring Judy. And then you do the same. You focus on the high-end tasks, and then you get yourself some other tasks from the next level. Mm-hmm. But I would maybe saying it in few words, it's about productivity. What is your productivity? Mm-hmm. Being productive is not to being 12 hours at the office or mm-hmm. working. It's about how to add value. How can you do that? The same thing that you do or better that you do in 8 hours. Europe has some ideas, or some companies that are going to 4 days a week of work. How can they do that? Well, you have to be productive, and the same that you did in 5 days, you have to do it now in 4 days. And then you have 3 days to read, to study, to be with your family, to pray, maybe, right? Mm-hmm. To meditate. So that's how do you get your productivity at that level?
Yeah. Okay. So, when I think about people who are entrepreneurs who are also successful leaders. I think about people like Richard Branson, who's constantly, his Virgin brand is constantly building new and different products and businesses.
Mm-hmm.
By the same token, he's a very effective leader. And a lot of it is because he has learned to delegate to other people the day-to-day running of the business. I think, though, that is part of the challenge I end up with a lot of my clients, or my now former clients, because a lot of them just, they have difficulties making that transition from, cowboy entrepreneur, we're going to make something, we're going to create something, we're going to, how do we run this, start this from, scraps into a multi-million-dollar business, and then they stay in that mindset as opposed to then taking that leap forward. So I understand what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I can work with it, but I think Bill Gates is a much more calm leader and he stepped into a leadership position much more gracefully than like Richard Branson, who was like, all right, we're going to start out by exporting albums that nobody can get any place outside the U.S. We're going to live in my mother's basement and use the telephone booth to make our phone calls, record a telephone booth instead of installing a phone in the basement. So it's as I said, for me, a lot of times these people, when I'm working with, are trying to get them from that kind of scrappy point to more, the laid back Bill Gates, I've got all the time in the world I need, because I've got all these people I trust.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's what I was going to say. It depends on the trust. You need to trust the people that you're working with. And if you don't trust them, it could be two reasons. Is one, because you haven't taught them yet. So you're not a good leader because you're not teaching, right? So teaching is about, being a leader is also about being a teacher, right? You need to have someone prepared to take on your position. If you don't have a person prepared in your position, you're never going to grow because, Nancy, we need Nancy to go to the next step. But who's going to take her place? We don't have any. Okay, Nancy, you're going to stay there till we have somebody. So you also have to be thinking of who are you teaching so that they can take on your position so you can grow. So it's about trust. You need that trust. You need to teach them, and then you need to let them do it. It's not like, okay, now you have to do what I tell you. Do as you want to do, as you think is better.
Go. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. I'm gonna put this on the Facebook. So any other questions, Nancy? I'll be glad to help you.
No, I think this has been great, and I appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, because it clarified a lot about the program. I think I already had a kind of definition, but just like, it's like the difference that you gives a black and white picture, and now you start putting some color in. So I really appreciate that and the time you've taken. So it's exciting, and I'm only about halfway through the Coursera course, so I'm taking it slowly because life. But I think it will be interesting. I also am going to see how I can try and figure out how I can incorporate it into the master's program I'm about to start. And you were talking about structure and having support at home in order to get to your goals. Well, the only way I can have support to get to my goals at this point is I have to go a quarter of the or a third of the way around the world, get out of my current situation. But that's a whole nother Oprah, and so yes, thank you very much for your time and your knowledge. I appreciate your willingness to share.
No, I appreciate it. I do it with always with love and kindness, and I hope it works. And I'm gonna send you everybody the recording, everybody that was registered, so that you can watch it again. And I'm gonna send you also my information. My name is, as you say, Felipe Moreira. You can find me as Felipe Moreira Mentoring, and it'd be nice if you have any other questions, or if you want to talk about it in other circumstance, and maybe not recording and putting it online, we can also do that. No problem, Nancy.
Great. Thank you so much.
I appreciate
you have a wonderful day.
You too. Right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
How do I get off?